Hello everybody and welcome. I am KRX. We're going to be taking a look at Wingspan, the digital Steam version, not to be confused with the Tabletop Simulator add-on that is also on Steam that you can purchase, but this is a standalone Wingspan digital adaptation. Now Wingspan, of course, is a very popular board game that came out 2 years ago, I believe, and it won the Kenner Spiel, one of the highest awards that you can win in board gaming. And essentially, I think most people agree that this is kind of like a gateway game or gateway plus, right? It's one that you could easily introduce to your family or your grandparents, or which are, of course, part of your family, or friends that are not familiar with the modern board gaming habit, anyone that likes birds. And essentially, this is a card game where you're building up engines, right? You're building these different little independent engines that you can then run to sort of get points and to sort of get resources that you need to continue to build your engine. And eventually you're just trying to get the most victory points, which are scored in a number of different ways, but you're playing down these birds to create these bird engines. Just to talk a little bit about sort of what you get with the digital version, the options and settings and ways to play and stuff. And then what we'll probably do is this will be kind of a how to play Wingspan, because I kind of realized I did a few recordings and I had to scrap them because I kind of realized I was talking a lot about comparing this to the physical version and just commentary and this and that and whatever, because I've played the physical version. I own and have played the physical version for Wingspan 15 to 20 times. And I like it. It's not my favorite board game ever, but I like it. And again, it feels that sort of like sort of a gateway game. It certainly would be a fun game to share with someone who was getting into the hobby that was new into the modern board game hobby, right? So this is a card game that is now a digital version on Steam. Anyways, so this is going to be more focused on how to play the game and just sort of looking at the gameplay and just the settings and the options and the ways to play and stuff like that. The second episode, what we'll do is we'll probably chop the first game, because they take about 30 to 40 minutes, and we'll chop the first game in half. And the second half, we'll talk about sort of more impressions, not really a review, but just some commentary and discussion about the game and stuff like that. So Wingspan has the digital Steam version here, has an online mode we can go into, and you actually get a matchmaking system, which is really, really cool. Now, it's a few days before the game has come out, so presumably there's not really anyone probably playing, or very few people probably queuing up right now, but hopefully when the game comes out, there will be a community of people allowing for people to play using the matchmaking system. It'll be really interesting to see how if this becomes popular. It's certainly a very relaxing game. It's a very casual game. It's easy to get into. So it could be something that people might really enjoy playing, and there might end up being a persistent community around here too. I believe they also advertise their Discord community somewhere where you can sort of create custom games with friends or Discord members and stuff like that as well. Up to two, you can play up to 5 players. It's 1 to 5 players, and that's the same with the physical version of the game too. You can also do sort of an asynchronous 25 hours per turn, where maybe you're at work and you're just taking turns every 30 minutes or so with someone else that's doing something similar, sort of like those play by email type systems and stuff like that. Is basically kind of what's going on with that. But that's cool to get both of these options here. That's actually really, really, really neat. If we go to the settings here, we can look and see. I don't think there's a borderless windowed mode. I'm just in windowed mode normally. It seems to work fine. I do think the game is running at 30 FPS. It does seem to be locked at 30 FPS. That's what Steam's telling me, which that's totally fine for a game like this, because this really is just a card game. I haven't noticed any issues. I'm just mentioning it there that it does seem to run at 30 FPS only. This isn't a VSync issue. My monitor goes up to much more than 30. So right now I think it's set to 60 refresh, but it can go beyond that. So you got some settings there. And for the most part, this is going to basically be a word-for-word adaptation from the rule set of the physical game. And I don't mean I'm going to be reading the rules. I mean, like, the way the game plays is exactly like it in the rule book. So if you're familiar with Wingspan, you're covered. And if you wanted to read the actual rule book, you can do that from BoardGameGeek.com. They have PDFs and stuff of the rule book on there. And you might be able to go onto their Wingspan's publisher's website as well and get the rule book there, so on and so forth. So when you go into the single player, the offline mode, you have 2 different options here. And I think a lot of people are probably just going to be picking the Automa right away. but you can play the custom game against a different kind of bot. So there's two different kinds of bots. There's the AI that plays as a human would play, which this is what I prefer. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we contrast with the Automa. The Automa is essentially this single player version of the board game where you are playing against a automated bot that essentially is drawing cards and following certain rules and so on and so forth to play certain cards sort of just kind of randomly, but they don't actually play the same game that you play. They're kind of doing their own thing, sort of drawing cards and resolving things in different ways and just sort of accumulating points. So the Automa just basically just kind of passively just accumulates a bunch of birds and points, and you just try to beat that score, whatever it is. Maybe if it's on easy, it'll be like a 60. Maybe if it's on medium, it'll be like a 75. If it's on hard, maybe it'll be like a 90. You just basically, it's like beat that score. It doesn't have the same reactivity and contextual decision making that the custom game bot will do, where this bot is going to play the game just like you play the game, like a human being. And in this case, you can add two bots. So one of the downsides of this is you only have easy and normal, so there is no hard difficulty here. And I found that this bot is particularly easy because it's not very good at actually making those contextual decisions, which is kind of a bummer. Let's do it is worth noting that the multiplayer, the matchmaking, is 3 players. Only 3 players. You can do custom games for 2, 3, 4, 5, and whatever. That's fine. But the multiplayer matchmaking, and that probably makes sense because they probably wanted to keep it so that people weren't queuing up for 2, 3, 4, and 5 and not finding any players. So it does force you to play 3 players with the matchmaking. I personally think this game is best at 2 players, just because it's a little bit more, you can keep track of what your opponent's doing and react a little bit more easily and cleanly. But either way, 3 players, I think most people probably prefer the game at 3 players. If you're playing the game with 4 or 5 players, at least with the physical version, which is not much of is not going to be the same issues with digitally, but with the physical version, it can kind of slow down a little bit. And I like to keep the player counts on the lower end of things personally, just to keep the games quick and moving. But with the digital version, it probably cleans, because it cleans up for you and shifts between players very quickly. It's probably going to be playing at a higher player count digitally is probably better than playing it at a higher player count physically. That's what I'm trying to say. Well, let's just set up a 2-player game with a normal sort of AI here. And this AI is going to play the game like a human will play the game. Not the same thing as the Autonoma, who plays by a different rule set and basically just has a way of generating passive points by drawing cards, looking at the cards, and getting a certain amount of points based on the cards that they draw. Which I think is kind of, again, that's great if you like playing against automas or the automatons or whatever they're called, because a lot of board games have them now, and that's great that they're available for people who like to do the solo gaming. And sometimes they're really fun. In this case, I find that it's not as it doesn't do it for me. I like when I can actually go to the opponent's board and actually see what they've done and make decisions based on what they've done and what I anticipate them to do. I like the reactionary gameplay a little bit more of playing against a human, right? And this bot is trying to be a human, even if it's failing. So the first thing we're going to have to do, and we're going to be teaching the game, probably not... It's one of those tricky things where to teach someone this game, if I was actually going to have a board game night and have some people over that hadn't played Wingspan before, maybe hadn't played modern board games before, right? It would probably be, especially if they haven't played any games before. I'm going to assume you guys are gamers, the people listening to this, or you've maybe played some board games, or at least you're familiar with just games in general. You play, because I always feel like if people do like playing computer games or video games or whatever, console games, anything, PC games, if people already like playing games, they have a higher sort of foundation to move over to board games. Like the systems in board games are basically just more sort of accentuated, whereas in video games they're kind of more massaged. But basically people that play games, whether digital, like computer games or board games, I think just understand systems, and that makes it easier to learn new games, right? So I'm going to assume that the people watching this are probably at least gamers on some level. So we're not going to go through the entire rule book, but I have read it and I have taught this game many times. So the first thing that we have to do, though, in the course of play in the setup is we have to pick 5 items between 5 birds and 5 food down here. These are one of each of the different kinds of food. The food are resources that we need to accumulate and spend to play the bird. So this bird here borrows golden eye, needs a fish, a caterpillar, and a wheat. This bird, the golden eagle, which is worth 8 points, the highest value bird out of all the birds that we have, if we can play it, needs 3 mice. That's probably why it's worth so many points, because it's actually it's a little bit more difficult to get maybe 3 of the same food, and maybe the mice are actually a little bit trickier just due to the way the dice are. Now, of course, we can't examine the dice, but physically I could show you the dice and I could show you why the mice are a little bit less likely than some of the other food types. And if we look around here, we can see it's the only bird that actually needs the mice or the rodents. So it is just a more rare food type in general. The osprey only needs 1 fish. That's kind of interesting. All players gain 1 fish from the supply. Has space for 2 eggs. Laying eggs on birds gives points at the end of the game. So we're trying to earn points, but our birds are worth points. The eggs that we lay onto the birds are worth points. So the golden eagle can only lay 1 egg. So that's not particularly... So the total maximum amount of the points for this bird is 8 plus 1. Whereas this bird is 5 plus 3 if we're just thinking about eggs plus bird points. The birds also do have activatable abilities when you run your bird engine, right? And we'll see how that works once we sort of set up. You'll be able to activate these abilities throughout the course of the game. In this case here, look at a card from the deck. If it has a smaller wingspan, you can see this is a 25 centimeter wingspan. This is a 200 centimeter wingspan, so this is a predator. The golden eagle is a predator. When you activate this card, you go hunting. And you draw a card from the deck. If it's less than 100 centimeters, you tuck it behind this card. Tucked cards are also worth points. So the golden eagle can be 8 points plus 1 point from an egg laid on it. If we get an egg laid on it, we might not. And we also get 1 point for every time it goes hunting successfully, right? If the bird's too big, it doesn't successfully hunt the bird. Like, it would not be able to hunt the osprey, but it would be able to hunt the yellow-breasted chat. The other thing that we need to consider actually right away is that these birds go into different environments. So this bird is played into the water environment, into this row. Your board is essentially broken into... Yeah, let's hide this for a second. Your board is broken into, and this is what it actually looks like if you're playing the physical game, but here we're probably going to be just flipping between the environments this way. But this could be a nice summary if you just want to see everything all at once. But you have columns and then rows, right? The rows are based on the habitat. So the water habitat, the marshy habitats, the grasslands, and the forests. And then rows represent sort of like the increasing abilities of these rows, and they get stronger. Here's 1 food dice. Here's 1 food dice, and then an additional 1 if you discard a card. There's 2 food dice, 3 food dice. They get more powerful, right? 2 eggs, 3 eggs, 4 eggs, so on and so forth. They're getting more powerful as they go. So we have bonus. This game is played. Sorry, guys. Physically, you can kind of create a flow for teaching this game if you're all sitting around a table. Digitally, it's kind of hard. There is a tutorial in the game, right? You don't have to learn it here. This video does not have to be how you learn the game. It just has to be how you have a general understanding of things so you can follow along and make a decision on whether this would be a game that you'd like to play or not. So I'm not going to be incredibly detailed, but I do just want to make sure that we're following along with the thought process at least. So over here we have end of round bonuses. There are 4 rounds in the game, and each of these rounds will score a different bonus. So this one we have the longest amount of time to work towards, which is eggs in nests, bowl nests specifically. We can see that this bird right here, the yellow-breasted chat, is a bowl nest bird. So if we had this bird full at the end of the game, at the end of the 4th round, which happens to be the end of the game, we would have 3 eggs in bowl nests, and that might be enough to get us the full amount of bonus points, or not. We'd have to see what our opponent, like, we'd have to, and this is a competition against our opponents, right? So this is whoever has the most of these different things will get the most bonus points. In the first phase, though, we're going to try to rush out maybe a platform bird. So this is saying a platform nest bird. So we have the golden eagle is a platform bird, and the osprey is a platform bird. But it has to have an egg on it. If it doesn't have an egg on it, then it kind of doesn't count. We don't count it. So it's birds that have eggs on them that are platform nesting birds. So in this case, the osprey is probably going to be one card that we might want to take out of our 5 choices at the beginning of the game, from what I can see. The other thing we need to consider before we start picking birds and stuff, is if we click this button here, we can open up and we can see which of these two cards is going to be our secret bonus objective card. So Food Web Expert, birds that only eat insects, will be 2 points at the end of the game. This is a secret objective that only applies to us. These are the round bonuses that apply to everyone, and we're competing against our opponent to do the most of these different things. And we can see those sort of coming as they, we can see those ahead of time. Oologist, birds that have at least one egg laid on them. So this results down to have 9 birds and they all have an egg on them. And we can get 6 points. That might be a little bit easier than finding birds that only eat caterpillars. It says only 9% of all cards in the deck are birds that eat only caterpillars. Do we have any birds that eat only caterpillars? No, this bird eats caterpillars and fish and wheat. This bird eats insects and berries. So this one seems like we wouldn't really, this one could be worth more points, right? Because we could earn 8 points with this one if we had 4 birds that ate only caterpillars, but we're not really even going to be starting off on that. This is a more generic, this is a very generic bonus card. It's 6 points, which is a lower sort of top end potential. It does require playing 9 birds, which could be a lot, depending on your game. For the most part, laying 1 egg on all of your birds, that's something you're going to want to do anyways. So I think we grab that bonus card. But over here, now that we don't have any specific, we do know we want a platform bird for round 1. So let's grab this osprey, and that might get us enough. If the opponent doesn't ever get a platform bird, they might not be able to even compete for this first one, because that first one, you got to really race for that first bit. We don't need a second platform bird, plus this guy's so expensive to play. I'm not worried about the golden eagle anymore, because getting 3 mice is going to be kind of tricky. The wood duck's kind of expensive as well at a 3 food. All of these are 3 food birds. Luckily, the osprey is pretty cheap. And the osprey actually helps us generate additional food. Now, it specifically generates fish, so we could try to look for something that pairs with that, like this bird here, Barrow's Goldeneye. Once between turns, when another player takes the lay eggs action, this bird lays 1 egg on another bird with a crevice nest. So this only triggers if the opponent lays an egg. The thing is, we're playing a 2-player game, so this tends to be a little bit weaker because there's less opponents potentially laying eggs. And then we also need to get a second. We'd have to get a second bird. Man, I'm not in love with any of these cards, to be honest. Draw 2 cards. If you do, discard 1 from your hand. This could be decent, right? Because this kind of just lets us get additional cards going. Like it lets us sort of generate... Whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to scratch the microphone there. Get additional cards going when activated. This bird, if this bird is to the right of all our birds, move it to another habitat. These birds are really fun because they can sort of shift around. There's kind of a... We could sort of talk about why that makes sense. The nice thing is this also sort of has opposite foods. So what we could do is if we take these 2 birds, and it's also going to be a nest bird. We know we need nests, bowl nests specifically for this one. We don't have any platform. We know that even sooner than the bowl nests, we need the ground nests, but we don't have any birds that have ground nests. Let's just grab the food that we're going to need. Like we need caterpillars, fruit or berries, and fish. Sorry if I say this differently like every single time I read off the foods, but let's do that. So we took 3 food. And we took 2 bird cards. That made 5 total. We can just immediately play. So we could play, this bird has to be played in the marshlands, right? Has to be played in the marshlands. We have the fish. We grab the fish specifically to play this bird. So we could just play this, and we always play to the left. So it goes into column 1. It doesn't cost us any eggs. The left column does not cost eggs. It's saying we're going to have to pay this food. Yep, we're going to pay. Great. So what did you do on your turn? Okay, you played this card into your forest. Gain 1 wheat from the supply and cash it on this card. Okay, so that cached food on a card just generates points. They can't use this food to play birds though, so it's honestly not... I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed, but they have 1 bird. Wait a second, is it a platform bird though? No, it is a crevice bird. So they're not working towards this yet. But what they've done is they've upgraded their food generation so they can take a more powerful food action, whereas we've upgraded our card action so we can more easily draw additional cards. Speaking of which, to do the super bonus of this, we would need eggs. We'd need to discard eggs for additional cards. Let's go and let's lay eggs. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Undo. There you go. If you misclick, you can just undo. No big deal. So we're going to go here in the grasslands. This is where we lay eggs. The forest is where we get food. And the marshlands is where we get cards. The more birds we play here, the more cards we get when we activate this area. In here, the more eggs we get, the more birds we have. And again, because this is food, the more birds we have in this row, we unlock additional better. So if we covered this with a bird card, then we'd be using this. If we covered both of these, we'd be using this. And that's essentially the crux of the game, is you're trying to play cards into these sections to beef up the activatable actions. So what we actually did is we went here, and instead of playing a card, because I don't have enough food for this, I can't play this card. I don't have any food. We could go here and just get one food, but one food seems kind of lousy, just getting one food at a time. But heck, we're going to have to do that, to be honest. Although I hate to say it, but there's not really anything in here that we need. We need a berry. Dang, that's not good for us. So what we could do instead is we could look to try to draw cards, but to draw cards, we want to have these extra eggs. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to take the lay egg action. Clicking on that gives me the lay egg action. I have to go find a bird that has room for the eggs. That bird has room for 2 eggs. Boom, boom. Those eggs are laid. Okay. So they went for food. Ooh, that's kind of interesting. How much food did they take, and what's left in the bird feeder? So we can go to the food section to check the bird feeder. I mean, wheat is nice, but it doesn't help us play this card. We need a berry, specifically. If there's ever only one kind of food here, you get to re-roll what's here before you take food, if you want. But there's 2 kinds of food. There's rodents and wheat, grain. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw cards instead. See if we can get something that we can maybe play with the food that we have, or just get additional cards, basically. We are going to click this button here. So by default, the action is take 1 card. That's what the symbol is. Take 1 card. But then you can additionally spend 1 egg to get an additional card. That's what we're going to do. But to activate the additional bonus, we have to hit that, discard an egg, and there we go. Now we get to draw 2 cards. We can take them from the heads-up display, or we can grab them from the deck if we don't like any of these. We know we're looking for ground birds. There's some ground birds that are available here. Lay 1 egg on any bird. Okay. Lay 1 egg on each of your birds with a ground nest. That could be good if we get additional... Man, that could be good if we get additional ground nest birds. Like, we could just take both of these, but man, that would be a lot of wheat we'd have to slowly be generating. Oof. I wouldn't mind being able to play a bird into the forest as well so that we can get additional food at a time. I think we might just do this. Both of those look decently good. So I think we might just do that. If we could try to go for a lot of ground nesting birds, that could be good. Oh, that's right. We get additional food. So here's the question. Do we want our opponent to get a food, right? Because if we take this action, everybody gets a food. Oof. And we don't really need... Oh, man. We don't really need a fish, but here's the thing. If we get 2... we can exchange any 2 food for any 1 food, basically. So 2 food can become a wild card. So this fish will be halfway towards a wild, and we might be able to... No, what the heck? Let's just give ourselves the extra food, even though we're giving it to our opponent as well. It's a fish. They might not need it either. They're laying eggs. Okay, interesting. They're laying eggs. You know, this is kind of changing up my decision making a little bit here. I think we go back into here. We discard the second egg. We draw more cards. So we're drawing 2 cards again. Because that second fish, I forgot that we're getting fish. If we get a second fish, we'll be able to actually play this. And having extra cards means we'll be... I think things are going to work out for us here. I'm thinking we might grab this guy because he's kind of... Well, I don't know. Do we really care about crevice birds? It's another platform bird right here. It's also another sort of bird in the You know, let's draw randomly from the top, see what we get. It's a platform bird. Nice. So I don't think we need to, and it's a cheap platform bird. That's like the most important thing. It's a cheap platform bird. Let's just get it random from the top. Play a second bird in your grasslands, pay its normal cost. So that'll let us play a couple birds sort of in quick succession if we want to go that way with it. So the interesting thing is we can actually play this with a fish. So let's get that extra fish, even though we're giving a fish to the opponent. That's going to help our opponent out, probably. Okay, they've played an owl, so they played something over here. What kind of bird is it? Is it a platform bird? Owl might be a platform bird. No, it's a crevice bird. Seems kind of weird. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? I think the plan was originally to play this bird here using the 2 fish, but now that we have the American crow, technically we can even play this. I think we're going to go for a slow build here. Slow build up. Yeah, we're going to do 1 fish. Play the American crow there. Okay, we only have 3 turns left this round. I'm going to actually get more eggs because I want to be able to discard eggs with this ability and also discard eggs with this ability. So let's get more eggs. Doesn't really matter where we put them. Actually, it does matter because we need to have an egg on this card at the end of the round. And if we wanted to be able to discard this to get that special ability, we would have needed an egg here. But I actually don't think we need to do that right away. We're going to come down here, get just more cards right now. Actually, wait a second. Discard 1 from any of your other birds. Other birds. But the reason why I'm going here is because I can use this food. That food can benefit. You know, actually, let's undo all this. Let's undo this turn because I'm realizing that we get extra food if we go this way now. If we discard an egg, we can get extra food this way. And we have extra cards that we could probably discard because I don't know if we're in love with all the cards that are in our hand. So which of these two? Well, we kind of wanted to play both of these birds, but this bird will let us get them out faster. So it's kind of a tricky situation. Also has a lot of space for eggs too. This is a decent bird. It's a decent bird. That's why I was kind of thinking going down here would be nice because we could just get an extra junk bird that we could then discard. But I don't really want to discard. We have 2 turns, so if we discard an egg here, we'll be able to play this bird somewhere. And if we go up here, we'll be able to get additional without discarding. You know what? We're going to do this, but we're not going to discard any of our eggs. Yes, we are. Keep changing my mind on that. Man. I'm not in love with the birds that we're getting here. Hey, you know, we are getting a lot of fish. So that actually might be kind of an interesting option. Okay, those are the birds that we got. Repeat a brown power on 1 other bird in this habitat. So it just mimics another bird. And then this one is a draw 2 bonus cards, keep 1. That's also a wild, it's a very valuable bird. It's an 8 victory points, and it's also a wild nest. It counts as anything there. So that's kind of neat. Yeah, we're going to be getting an extra food there because we're going to need that food because I think we are going to now, on our final turn, we're going to play this bird somewhere. I think we're going to actually play this bird up here for reasons. This bird's really interesting because it bounces around. This bird bounces to different locations, so we'll see how that works in a second. Yep, that's basically, we have to pay all of our food to do that, including converting 2 fish into a wild berry because we were just so kind of inefficient with it. Oh, we do have to, oh no! if we do that, we have to pay... Oh no, we have to pay a bird to do that. We have to pay an egg. I don't want to pay an egg. Okay, well this AI might end up playing a platform bird, but it wouldn't have... What we could do is we could just... No, I think we got to go for the bonus 4. Man, that was a mistake. Well, we could just play this guy into here, where it doesn't cost an egg in this row. Yeah, that's fine. That's totally fine. So that the AI did not play a bird. How do we go to that menu to see how we're progressing on those objectives? Oh, you click on that up there. Okay. So just click up here and you'll get a summary. It says we already have 1 bird in our grasslands. The AI has none. So it's trying to keep a tally on how they're doing at the moment. So unfortunately the AI this is one of the things that the AI bot doesn't understand the system at all, I don't think. So they just kind of forfeit all of those points because we ended up just earning 4 points for being number 1 and they got 0 because they didn't even play one at all. We only had 1 bird with 1 egg. They could have easily potentially tried to play 2 platform birds and gotten 2 eggs on them, but instead they're kind of a doofus. So let's play this let's lay 2 eggs. Let's lay 2 eggs. Okay. But I think we've actually come into round 2, guys. We've come into round 2 on a 4-round game, right? Round 1, we were able to have more platform birds with eggs. We had 1. The AI had none. We can go over here and see what the AI is up to. They only have 2 birds. And for the most part, guys, I think we're going to take a pause here and then we'll finish up this match just because it's getting kind of lengthy. The second half of this, I think we'll do a little bit more commentary and just discussion now that we know how to play the game and stuff like that on a basic level. Again, the tutorial will teach it more extensively, and also just reading the rulebook online and stuff like that can help if things still aren't making sense. It's just one of those things where it's hard to actually teach the game without, you know, the sitting around a table and stuff like that as well. Thanks everybody for being here. If you guys have questions about Wingspan, please ask down in the comments, whether it's about the game, how to play it, the digital version of it on Steam, you know, what's included, what isn't, yada yada, thoughts on the moves that we made or how you would have done something differently or such, or how you prioritize things differently, whatever you want to say. We also have a good Discord community as well, linked down below, where we have a board game section on there where people talk about board games. Of course, we do run a channel that focuses on strategy games and simulation games and building games, but we also, of course, I think it makes sense that people that like those kind of games tend to like board games too. So I'm a modern board game fan as well, and love talking about board games. So you can do that on the Discord. People could team up with other people that potentially might be interested in getting this game as well, and stuff like that. So thanks everybody for being here and checking out Wingspan on Steam, the digital version on Steam. And we will continue this in part 2 where we'll finish out this match. Thanks everybody.